solving, and that's the same thing for us as we do it through segmentation and then mail only the folks that qualify to essentially take the exam based off of the data we have. We are also taking it a step further, and we've just launched a predictive model that would, based on activity on the website, through social channels, and through email, we are essentially grading whether they're more likely to take the exam or not. And we are in week 2 of that testing, and so far the predictive model is holding true, which, if any of you have done predictive modeling in the past and spent 6 months building a model only for it to fail, you'll know how you can't tell from my rough voice, but I'm pretty damn excited about it.
So for AVON, I mean, a lot of you guys know, like, there's these AVON ladies, the representatives. So actually, the personalization actually started way back then. And so all the emails we actually send out is on behalf of the representative to their actual customers. So we started that communication and tailoring that message from the representative to their customers, so kind of helping the representative send those emails out. So this has been going on for like years before I started. So I've only been at AVON for about 1.5 years. And earlier this spring, we essentially took all this, years of data that we've had, and no one's really looked at this data and leveraged it to a point of, what can we kind of message in terms of creative and copy, and where are the right touch points. So we actually built understanding these customers off of a RFM model. And we took kind of the layers on top of that were, the sales and the frequency, understanding when they were actually purchasing, within which category they were purchasing, and then developing email campaigns based off of that. And everything was based off of dynamic components of it. There was a lot of testing in the first couple of months. What I noticed was just like the resources and times were taking a ton of time, loading it, kind of loading all the segments to be built, to be sent at real time, because this was sending out every single day. There's a lot of pain points as well. So, we would kind of create like a very big A-spot creative of like a skincare buyer and complement it with like a makeup offer or a fashion offer underneath it. And I actually saw really nobody touching those bottom pieces at all, and they wanted their offer because they were a skincare buyer. So I actually reduced those 2 components at the bottom and then made it more simple for my creative and copy team to just focus on the A-spot and then send that email out. And then every single week I would change the creative to see if they would actually buy something else. They weren't buying it, which is bizarre. They were just very true to their skincare routine or very true to their makeup offers. And so within that, I just started to send them only skincare offers. And so AVON changes their campaigns every 2 weeks. So it's essentially we have to kind of keep up to date with all the offers, the pricing, the new product launches, and being relevant to the actual customer based on her purchase history.
Cool. So one of the big business problems that we're able to address with personalization is kind of product expansion features and additional products in our offering. So a lot of people that use Uber use one specific Uber product for one specific reason, right? And a lot of folks here might use it to get to an airport, back to an airport, those kinds of things. Some people will use Uber exclusively to go out for the night if they're, they think they're going to be drinking or something like that. But we're always trying to find opportunities to introduce other uses of our products or other offerings in our product line to folks. And an example of that, where we use personalization both to identify the target and make the message very hyper-relevant, is for business travelers that will go from an airport to a hotel. When they get dropped off there, a lot of these, they're using Uber to get from the airport to the hotel there. And a lot of them don't use Uber Eats. So we take that opportunity to identify these users. We see patterns of going to and from airports and hotels. We know they might be a frequent business traveler or just personal traveler. And we can offer up a message that says, hey, you're at this hotel. One option is you can get room service, or you've got these 8 restaurants nearby that you can use Uber Eats, have it delivered right to the restaurant, and have a lot more options and probably better food than what you have to offer at the hotel. So things like that, we have a lot of insights about our users, what they do, what they use our product for, and from that we can kind of extrapolate what they might be interested in next, and add value with things like local personalization, what's around, what's nearby, what might you be interested in that's right here and very relevant to you at this moment.
Great. I'm going to switch now to talking about consumer journeys and personalization. Like I wanted to build on what Monica was saying. I thought that was really awesome that she has a lapsed user journey for different types of consumers or customers. You know, someone that shops a lot, if they don't shop for several months, that's lapsed, but then somebody else, that might not be lapsed. I know for us, as we're exploring where to personalize and what's worth it to personalize, the consumer journey is really the anchor around which we can develop ideas. So I wanted to throw it out to each one of you, like how are you thinking about customer journeys and personalizations together, and what benefits are you finding from doing that, or what are you planning to do? And I think I'll switch it up and start with Wayne first.
Yeah. So in that, a lot of our communication is one-to-one at this point, and it's that way because of the customer journey, and we use that to inform kind of every touch point along the way where we communicate with users. We know a tremendous amount about what a user needs to do, you know, say it's onboarding onto a product or becoming a power user of a product. We're very easily able to kind of detect the patterns and the behaviors that we expect people to take to get to that happy path, if you will. So we're constantly consuming that information, mining for insights, and using that to determine how we can personalize the communication to get folks to that next step. Whether that's you know, presenting the things that they've completed and steps that are next, whether that's identifying cohorts that are specifically off track with what we want them to do. But yeah, that's that customer journey, that understanding that series of steps to what takes a customer from new and kind of fresh with your brand to being a real power user, an advocate of your brand. You know, that kind of gives you the roadmap. Within that, you can kind of personalize to make sure that you're getting them to every milestone along the way to, you know, to success.
Yeah, so when I started this project in spring, I actually started kind of collecting a lot of the different offers and the creatives that were going out to, say, for example, makeup buyers. And so we kind of did this test for about 3 months and placed a regression model on it and started understanding that the type of offers sent out to skincare buyers or makeup buyers, they were only responding to so many of them. And so this was great information to essentially provide to the merchandising teams to kind of re-merchandise the website or sending them to a relevant, consistent page and giving them that right offer to understand like they're actually going to convert on this offer versus another offer that they're not going to waste their time on. The other things that we usually do are understanding their predictive churn probability. So being relevant and understanding when they're actually going to churn and having an automated series going out. I actually have about 45 different automated triggers based on essentially you may leave us or you're actually a really great customer, first-time purchaser, you're a regular cart abandonment, and then actually pushing it all over to Facebook and complementing that experience with the relevant message and creative, and getting that conversion rate to actually increase further. And we've seen great results through that as well. So just doing that is a win for us.
I would say everything for us is on the roadmap. We haven't done too much. We're sort of unique in that you wouldn't think contact lenses are a single SKU business, but they really are. The prescription is to a specific product. It's not like eyeglasses where you get a prescription, you can go anywhere in the world and buy eyeglasses. You get a prescription for AccuView Oasis. You get a prescription for Air Optics Aqua. So we can't cross-sell. We are working, and like I said, in the pipeline, we're working on developing churn models, like you mentioned, we can't really develop a churn model too well in somebody who's only ordered from us once. We really think we can't start doing that till we get to the people who purchase from us at least 3 times. Because with any sort of predictive accuracy, a single purchase is really hard to base a model off of. So that's where we're starting. That's sort of our low-hanging fruit, is our sort of consistent customers. But like I said, it's all on the roadmap.
Autolist is kind of similarly, have a lot of stuff on the roadmap. When I joined Autolist, actually my predecessor had just moved everything over to iterable, and before that everything had been very engineering based and everything was just embedded within the code. So from that, basically we right now still do a lot of sending in terms of transactional confirmation emails for any actions that you've taken within the app. are on the site. And then we also send a lot of alerts in terms of like price drops and new listings. So we're doing really well there, I think, but there's definitely a huge opportunity in terms of building out a full customer cycle. You know, for someone who's looking to buy a car, that can be as long as a 17-week process. And so I think one of the challenges for setting that up and really identifying those different decision points is kind of understanding where the customer is when they come to us at the very beginning and they sign up for our emails. We have no idea at this point whether or not they're high, mid, or low funnel. And so I'm trying to kind of look at the different behavioral signals that we have on the website in terms of their behavior. And we're also rolling out kind of like a survey at the very beginning to help, hopefully, you know, like brand new customers who are coming to the site looking for a car. If they just don't know what they want, we can help kind of have them go through this quiz and set up their first search for them. And then hopefully from there, they'll, you know, save a search, save a favorite, and then we can start kind of deciphering where are you at in the buying cycle, how far out are you from buying a car, and really be able to start kind of building out that journey and addressing those needs. I think we have a lot of really great content too. We have a content team that produces a lot of guides and a lot of studies. We have someone who's a editor-in-chief who was previously in like automotive journalism. So a lot of great stuff there that I think will be coming.
Okay, let's talk measurement. Measurement is important to every single person in this room. So I'm going to ask you, what do you do to measure your programs, both the success of the individual activities, but also to answer this larger question of, is personalization worth it? And I'll tell you where I'm coming from. So in CPG, we've had a lot of success for decades in big mass awareness advertising. And over time, it's been honed very well so that it is efficient in terms of spend. So in my world, not everyone thinks personalization is worth it, which may be different, very different from where you sit. So I'm going to ask you again, like, how are you measuring your program activities, and how are you measuring that you're doing the right level of personalization? I'll start with Lucy.
So for now, we mostly measure our programs based on email engagement, so standard click-through rates, open rates, and then also we look at sessions. The more sessions that we drive, the better it is in terms of getting lead submissions and providing value for our dealers. I think in terms of the personalization side, we're still pretty early on, but some of the wins that we've had have definitely been like being able to personalize our emails to the point that we can show you, you know, new listings that are relevant to your search. We get a lot of engagement from those. So I think in that sense, we are seeing a lot of success with that and hopefully can kind of expand that as we continue to build out our journeys.
We're all revenue, so it's revenue per email. I do revenue per click, orders per email, orders per click in terms of percentage. In terms of personalization, like the email itself doesn't have much personalization, but we personalize the web experience a little bit. So if you click through an email, you go to your cart and it pre-populates what your last order was. So if you ordered 6 boxes of your product, the cart will pre-populate 6 boxes of your product. The idea is to make it as easy as possible to click through and make the order. So, you know, we remove as much friction as possible. I think a big thing in terms of personalization for me is asking yourself with every email what you're expecting the recipient to do. So for example, we're testing time of day sends with our, what we call Express Exam, which is our online exam. And we're testing, you know, right now we did a test a few months ago before I started where they moved from sending at 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. And RPE went up, and also taking the exam went up. And now we're testing 1 p.m. versus 6 p.m. because buying contacts takes about 2 minutes. Taking the exam takes 30 minutes. When are people going to have more time? Is it at 6 a.m. or at 6 p.m.? So we're going to be testing that. We're also going to be testing not sending in the early part of the week, but on weekends where we know revenue might not be great, but if we get more people taking the exam and passing it, we're going to get more customers that way. So I would say if there's one take from my point of view, it's with every email, what do you want them to do and how long does it take? Because that really comes into consideration for personalization.
Yeah, so just trying to see where I can start here. We obviously look at revenue is the main component for understanding how our emails are doing, but once we understand that, I think really the most important piece is what is the objective of your email? It could essentially change from being offer-driven or being just like, here's a how-to, create this new right-wing eyeliner look or something. And so understanding that there's different objectives with the email, and of course, revenue is going to be great to complement that at the end. I also noticed that utilizing our web analytics, actually seeing that I'll send an email at 3 p.m., but actually revenue is coming in at 8 p.m. and it's mostly the West Coast. So I'll actually suppress the West Coast and then send them later to kind of ensure that we're targeting specific geolocations based on revenue and conversion rates at that time. So that's been really helpful for us in terms of understanding the web analytics and the revenue data that's coming through for each email campaign. We also just started doing a deep diver project of understanding, once you send an email out, how long does it take that person to convert? And we found that usually everyone converts within a day and a half. So then we'll reduce the amount of emails going out and then exclude them from any other further emails, just so they're not getting spammed constantly by us.
So as far as how we measure, most of our measurement is on downstream business impact. We're typically looking at what kind of business KPIs we affect with our campaigns. We don't do a ton of focus on like channel-specific metrics, unless we're working on something like subject lines or something like that. Most of our campaigns are intended to move downstream business KPIs. But at a higher, taking a step back from that, I think it's really important to focus on the insights and strategy that are driving the need for personalization. I think from that you can determine what you need to measure. Shouldn't really be doing personalization for personalization's sake. There should be an insight and then a strategy to back that up that says like, hey, this is something we can address, and we have data about our customer. We know this about our customer. We know this about how they use our product. This is an opportunity to add value by personalizing a piece of communication to them. So I think that's really important. No matter what your measurement technique is, as long as it's being driven by a true need, an insight, a strategy behind that says here's an opportunity to speak to customers in a certain way, and then in terms of how we know we're at the right level of personalization, I don't think you ever do. I think the goal is to challenge yourself, continually ask that question. Is there a better way to speak to people? Is there something I know now that I didn't know before that can make this communication more rich and more relevant? I think if you stop asking that question, things get dull and you stop innovating. So, always keep pushing that limit, ask yourself that tough question, challenge your ideas and continue to push forward.
Can you continue the conversation on insights? I'm going to ask each one of you, what have you learned from your personalization programs? What insights have you gotten, be it about your product, your customer, your brand, your inner being, whatever? Go ahead, Lucy.
Yeah, so another piece that we do in terms of email at Autolist is we actually do a lot of outreach to local and national journalists in terms of the content that we're producing, in the hopes of trying to get some media pickup. And so from that, we send a lot of personalized emails to local journalists where we have produced studies on, where your city ranks in terms of affordability and stuff like that. And so for those emails, we do first name personalization, and then we also put details about the city, details about the ranking, different kind of monetary details around that as well. But I've actually found that personalization does not prevent fatigue. We've been sending pretty similar emails over the past several years, I think, in terms of that. And so we've noticed that lately we are not getting as much local pickup as we used to. And so I think that personalization really doesn't prevent the fatigue of just seeing the same type of content over and over again. So I'm working currently with our content team to really kind of think about what other types of studies and content can we kind of come up with that will lead to additional kind of media pickup by the local outreach and kind of reach back out to those journalists again.
I already spoke to the predictive model on the Express exam piece. What we've learned is that incremental changes in creative don't drive revenue. Every list is different, of course, but if the email isn't different enough from what they normally receive, it doesn't matter. So in terms of personalization, I sort of have a contrarian point of view a little bit, and just from some data I've looked at, that I had a theory that we could mail openers of only in certain lists, only mail openers and not lose revenue, and I was dreadfully wrong, because I thought if they're not opening, clearly they're not interested, and this was, I went, okay, went to my data guy and I said, take last week's mailings, take everyone who's received an email and ordered in any channel in the next 48 hours, and then split it out by openers and non-openers. And the revenue for that week was 40% from non-openers. So I would say there's a level of personalization that matters, but there's also just value in being there in the inbox. Like I said, my little contrarian point of view for this panel. So, you know, we have a brand, and clearly the brand has equity, and I'm happy about that, and I'm not gonna destroy it. So I would say in terms of personalization, test the living crap out of it, because you could, like for example, with the predictive model, we're still mailing everyone, we're just testing the yes people versus the no people, and it's following suit. Will we eventually change how we mail the no people? Sure, but we're not there yet.
I think the next step for us is really understanding the engagement metrics of each campaign, the types of campaigns that we're sending out. And so one of my big projects for next year is essentially building kind of an engagement decile. So understanding the types of customers I'm talking to, the types of creative I'm setting, the campaigns I'm sending, and then kind of suppressing that so that we are reducing that batch and blast motion again, just because we just have so many emails happening, because you could either be a AVON representative, you could be a customer, you could be someone who's in the pipeline to become a representative. So there's just so many kind of touch points that AVON could essentially have with you. And so kind of building this engagement decile on all the different campaigns that are going out, we're really trying to reduce that based on the different campaigns. So we'll see how that goes, and hopefully that helps the fatigue of our customers and our representatives.
Yeah, we use email quite a bit in kind of like a choose your own adventure way. We realize there's pain points along certain processes for drivers, riders as they're moving along the journey with the brand. And in order to collect insights, something we've done previously is, we'll list the top 3 or 4 reasons they might be experiencing a pain point. And we use email as that feedback loop. So it's an opportunity for personalization and to gain insights. So if someone selects, I'm stuck here because my car doesn't qualify. We can start to gather that data. We can determine, what percentage of users are being affected by that issue. Can use that to kind of guide other business decisions. But then we would also follow up with hyper-personalized information that would specifically address the issue that they're having. I think the other way we use email and CRM is to validate insights. We have a channel that we can rapidly test and iterate in. So as you acquire insights from other channels by other means, whether it's focus groups or surveys, don't be afraid to use email as the channel to validate that. Is this something that we can actually act on or affect? You can really get great quantitative backup to some of those insights that you gather.
We're doing really well on, on time, so I think I'm going to ask one more question before turning it over to Q&A. And the question is, what is next on your roadmap?
Definitely building out a journey. And then also, I think, kind of looking at the dealer side. So I think that that's something that we definitely don't want to forget about, is that as we're starting to work a lot more closely and directly with dealers, that's another whole side of the life cycle to think about, where as they kind of engage with our sales team, kind of nurturing that, getting them through the sales process. Then we'll have our customer success team come in and do, onboarding and getting them all set up on our platform. So I think definitely kind of building out the full life cycle on both sides is a really, really big task ahead of me, but I'm really excited. I think it's a really big opportunity, and there's a lot of room for experimentation and playing around and figuring out what'll work best.
Yeah, for us, we're moving to a customer data platform. People have asked me who, I'm not going to say. Part of our big challenge, I think it's a challenge for any email marketer, is access to data and then actually using that data in email. And so part of why we're moving to the CDP is to have one source of truth for our customers, because customer data is probably in 10 different tables in a couple different warehouses internally, and that creates a challenge where our weekly mailings are done with manually uploading lists, which if you're still in that boat, please raise your hand and admit it. No, just me? Awesome. So that will enable us to move faster and have what I like to call agility with data, in terms of, okay, what points do we want to test? What pain points do we want to get over? We should probably stop mailing some people that just ordered 15 days ago and they ordered a year's supply of contacts. They probably don't need to buy again. So those are the challenges we're going to hopefully overcome here in the next year. And like I said, in terms of our level setting here, I'm definitely at the crawl stage of personalization, but that's what's on our roadmap.
Yeah, so I mentioned the engagement deciles, which would be a big thing, but really it's just going through our data and kind of cleaning that a little bit further. We just have so much kind of information, and it's going from a customer could essentially have 4 different records in our database, which is awful. And so trying to streamline that process and cleaning that information up with the representative database that we also have, that's probably one of the biggest projects that we're going to have to go through, just because it's going to be such a pain to continue with that and continue messaging these people and not understanding where they're actually, which are they a customer or are they a representative? So very big project for us next year.
Yeah, I think our next horizon is in machine learning predictive space. I think we are maybe a bit rare in that we kind of have too much data to work with, and it's really difficult to parse through that at the scale that we're operating. So a lot of the work that we're doing right now is trying to get in, machine learning models, predictive models, those kinds of things to be able to kind of crunch through that for us and identify opportunities that aren't immediately apparent. So that's where a lot of the time is being spent now. Planning to use that in a number of ways. The way we recommend products, the surfaces in which we expose them. It's another issue we come up against quite a bit. We have a lot of surfaces, modalities where we can present information to people. We've got multiple apps. We've got SMS. We have email. We have all these channels. Being able to, the kind of broad idea here, right place, right time, right channel. So yeah, that's kind of the next big thing for us. Happy to chat more about that later if you guys want.
Thank you. This is really inspiring, getting loads of ideas here. Scott, you keep saying that you're crawling. I feel like it's like a speed crawl if you're crawling. Anyway.
Yeah, okay. I'll take it.
Okay.
All right, we
questions.
have. Let's open it up for questions. I know we have a ringer here. Della, if those of you who haven't met Della, he's one of the longtime friends of the Email Summit, and I know that he has a special question to ask on this topic.
Thanks. So, and thanks for the intro. I didn't have to do that now. For the panel, you kind of touched on it by saying what level of personalization is okay, and one of the things. Concern's probably the wrong word, but if someone came from outside and listened to this, you would be thinking, oh my God, personalization is everything. If you're not doing that, you're a complete idiot, et cetera, et cetera. And my concern is that the data doesn't always support that. I was looking at, through eDataSource, they have their panel, they sign up to lots and lots of emails and they check the performance. And over the last 5 years, we're actually doing more batch and blast than we used to, which might surprise you. We're doing a lot of personalizations, and we're getting high open rates from that, but we're also improving the open rates in the batch and blast. So the question I'm pushing to the panel, and Scott, I liked your point, that a lot of people who are not opening the emails are actually buying almost immediately after it arrives in their inbox or whatever it is, and if you look outside attribution, you actually get to a better place, and you feel better about the mailings that are not personalized. So to the panel, are you saying that everybody here should spend the rest of this year focusing on moving from crawl to run at the expense of their batch mailings, or is there a balance? That's my question.
I'll jump in first. For us, it's always incrementality. So it's test and learn. If I go to my boss with an idea, he'll say, great, prove it. Prove that there's revenue there. If I can't prove there's revenue there, we move to something else. And it's always take the same list, mail everyone, but in your test group, see if that's better. And if it's better, then, like for example, with our Express Exam emails, we send the same campaign basically every week. We finally had a new creative that outperformed the original creative. Now that email is going to everyone, and revenue's improved. So there's that branding value of being there, but you have to prove it, and it's incremental. So I would say for the people here who are going, oh my God, I have to start running right away, you will not get there because you have to start small. You have to go with what's going to make me money here, what's going to make me money there, or whatever your conversion metrics are. For us, it's all orders and revenue. For others, it could be actions. You could have, instead of direct revenue drivers, it's action-based emails. But that's where I would start. Don't think you have to start running right away. Nobody runs a marathon on day one.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think it has to do with, with your brand and your customer expectations. I think there are brands whose customers have a very high expectation. They realize you know certain information about them and expect you to talk to them in a way that acknowledges that. I think there are brands where that's less important to the interaction between. So, and I think kind of taking it full circle to what I said earlier, I think, using insights and strategy to drive all of that, personalization for personalization's sake isn't right. Personalization where it adds value and enriches the, the customer experience, I think is the right way to go.
Just a quick kind of throwback. Very interestingly, someone said, and lots of people agreed with it, the best personalization is undetectable to the person who gets it. Now that sounds to me like a batch email.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading, I can't remember the name of the book, but it was about consumer expectations and things like that, and at the very least know when somebody damn well orders from you. So if you get an order and then the next day you send them an offer for something they just ordered, you could say that's personalization. A personalization fail, for instance, that's a really small thing you can fix. So just get the basics down. Get the, okay, they ordered, or they didn't order, so have abandoned cart in place. The emails themselves, we have the same campaign goes out every week, but the box image matches what the customer has ordered before. That's a piece of personalization. You can start in little places like that.
Well, and I also kind of wanted to, Rob, a point that when you and I were talking earlier about this very point is that one of the possibilities is that personalization can often lead to fatigue because in many ways it's so reliant on targeting and dynamic personalized content that the creativity has a tendency to flag, and that a more generalized branding email might actually catch people's attention better because there's more pressure on that email to be more creative, and that we actually get fatigued by a sort of set of expectations about a brand that's constantly sending us what they want our next shopping cart to look like.
Yeah, I mean, that can be the case. I would say we spend a lot of time with our creative team kind of discussing the value of data and what we can do from a creative perspective. So like, I'll toot our team's horn here for a second. Most of you will probably receive it in the next 2 weeks or so if you use Uber. But we do like a year in review, and it's one-to-one personalized, where we kind of go through all the ways that you used Uber through the past year and construct a very cool infographic out of that. That is all about information about you, your city, the places you frequent. And I mean, the creative is unbelievable. So if anyone from my team is watching and they're on the creative team, incredible work. You guys are awesome. But yeah, so I mean, I think it's challenging to address it that way, but it's a challenge worth facing if it can provide value to your experience.
Are we allowed to ask questions intra-panel?
Yeah.
So real quick on the infographic, we talked about doing something like that and then realized, why would you send that type of thing to somebody who's ordered once? Do you have a threshold in place? Like, for example, I think I've used Uber once in the past year, and it was on business travel. Would you send me an email with, hey, you did one trip from the San Diego airport to the Marriott? Or where's your sort of data threshold?
Yeah, I mean, we have fallbacks for that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? In that case, we might show information about your city. Here's things that are popular in your city. Here's and in that case, our strategy and intent changes, right? For someone that frequents the brand, we want to highlight the way they use it and kind of commit to that relationship with the user. For someone that isn't using it, we can show information about the city and kind of promote other ways they can use it, right? Here are points of interest you could frequent that other people around you are doing. Here are restaurants you can order from that other people are ordering from. So we use that ability to kind of shift dynamically on the fly and kind of change strategy as needed. I've never
yeah,
had
actually,
a question
we're-
from another panelist. That's pretty awesome.
We're actually going to talk about this tomorrow
Can I
morning
start the trend?
when we talk to American Express about their now award-winning email program, about the ways in which they leverage the user's own data and send it back to them to have a better understanding and insight about their own habits, and use that as a sort of as the hero message of the email. Since I wanted to ask one exit question. Since all of you are overseeing larger programs than just email, I wanted you all to pull back from that and maybe address something that, Wayne, you addressed briefly at the end, about how these personalized email programs compare to some of the other emerging channels that you're working in, like app alerts, like SMS, like social messaging. Are you seeing other channels emerge that are vying for personalized email to have that one-to-one contact? Or even in testing mode, are you seeing them?
I only run email right now. The goal is to potentially, on retention, we've done a little bit of direct mail since I've started. We're seeing some good luck in reactivation with what we call our dead file in Facebook. And when, in terms of offers, like for Cyber Week, we did an offer to folks who have never made a purchase through our mobile app. And so we gave them 10% off their first purchase through the app. And so we did email around that, where it was the message itself, like I said, it was fresh creative to a specific segment, but in terms of the email itself was the personalization, and we did an app push there. And so it actually did pretty well because we had that cross-channel, but we have an app team, we have an acquisition team, we have a social team, so we're pretty siloed, and I'm pretty sure that's not uncommon in this room, that if you're in charge of email, that's all you're in charge of. But we've seen some success with that.
But you still don't know yet whether you don't necessarily know whether, say, retargeted social display social display retargeting is actually could be outperforming personalized email.
Not yet, but we're also using that for folks that are opted out or are, they've been unengaged with email. We have a pretty wide engagement window in terms of, like, for a lot of e-commerce, you might have, if they haven't engaged in 6 months, they're technically dead. We go to 18 months because it's a longer buying cycle. We have some people that will buy a year's worth of contacts. We'll have some people that buy 2 years worth of contacts, because depending on the state you're in, you could have a prescription that's good for a year or a prescription that's good for 2 years. So the buying cycle varies so much that we have a much wider window of opportunity for email.
I'm sorry, Wayne, I stepped on your response.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, yeah, for us, yeah, we are, email is kind of a tool in our arsenal, but we rely on a number of channels. And again, we're trying to get into that predictive and model-based space of understanding which is the right one, very one-to-one for every single user. Right now, it's a little bit matrixed in that we know that some messages are very relevant when you're in the app, exposed in the service within the app, within the context of what you're doing at that moment, and that is just more valuable than any channel we could use to supplement that. But then in some cases, email's the right channel. So again, I think that's going to be unique to everybody, but it's about understanding, what your users are doing and how you can best support that.
I can answer that as well.
Yeah.
So we are looking at personalization across paid media channels, website, email, and social. And I will say there are very different problems to solve and work streams. For one, the data is very different in how we use it. So for paid media and social, we very much do broad-based awareness campaigns. And the question we have, is the data good enough that we can personalize? And also, ultimately, is it a question of very good audience targeting, and that's sufficient, or do you actually need to personalize the creative? So that's a very different set of questions than, say, our email personalization efforts, where we feel pretty good that we do want to do more personalization. It's more of a question of how efficient can we get at it so that the cost is bearable to our brands. In terms of comparing them, I think this is where measurement is presenting a barrier. We do not measure in a way that I can right now easily compare success on paid media to social to email. So that's an area that we are looking at getting a lot better at.
So I can kind of jump in here real quick. So we have like a bunch of automated emails that go out, and those are also personalized on like your last purchase, or other people who have purchased similar products like you. We're going to serve up a carousel as that. The web experience as well kind of understands your behavior on site to kind of show you relative products as well, and it learns your behavior throughout the site to kind of serve you up those particular things. What I've been able to do is kind of utilize some of the segments that I've built and push it over to paid social, and have seen a great return, essentially in like cart abandonment. I'm there in the right moment, so that's been doing really well for us. But in general, emails are like our biggest driver for us in terms of revenue. Right behind it is probably paid search and affiliates. So they all complement each other, and essentially, if I did get an email, I'm probably going to search for that product, and so my attribution model kind of touches all of them. And right at the end of the affiliates, I'm going to get that Ebates deal for a 10% cashback deal too. So they all have a component of touching a consumer in some way. I was reading some study recently by Google. It's like someone could literally look for a lipstick and search something within 120 touch points. So just searching for a lipstick, which is insane that a consumer is doing so much research and making that jump to, especially like a new brand, and considering that brand to purchase that particular lipstick. It's kind of bizarre, but being relevant and being timely is incredibly important, especially if you have those handles of all those channels, making sure that that is consistent in some way. The only other thing that I've learned in paid social is that we have our representatives on there as well. So making sure that the copy and the creative is actually pretty much evergreen and not too personalized, just because that's going to be a little bit creepy, and it's not going to be really relevant to them if they're going to share it to their entire network of friends. So just being understanding of that component of Facebook particularly, because of that shared component.
Narasu, this is a killer panel. Thank you very much, guys.